I am Linda Molina, and I am the co-founder as well as the director of the Emerging Scientists Foundation. And that's quite a title for me. I always wondered, coming from the background that I did, it's been really, really interesting to see how my life has turned out. And I just wanted to share our screen here.
Are you able to see our slides?
Not yet.
Okay,
Yes.
try that again. Okay. All right.
Do you still have the slides?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so birthing a new future for humanity, the untold story. So like Susan said, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of our story here as well. But first, as I start, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about your childhood. Now, from my understanding, many childhoods, especially here in the modern age, they're based on just your mom, your dad, if you're lucky, and your siblings. And you do activities all within this very immediate family. You go on vacations with just the immediate family. You kind of keep to yourself in the immediate family, probably see your cousins during holidays and things like that. If this was you, then you know what I'm talking about. But I want you to think about now the way I grew up. I am a first generation Mexican American, and I grew up in a very lower socioeconomic community. So a city called Paramount, right next door to Compton. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard of Compton. I myself graduated high school from Compton. So that gives you a little bit more about my background and what I experienced and how my understanding of the world has come to be. And I want to share that with you. So a lot of how I grew up was very, very family oriented. Everything we did, every weekend, we were with our cousins. In fact, we lived in a duplex that my father owned, and my cousins lived in the back. And if we weren't with them, we were in our other cousin's house, and everyone was always together. Every weekend was a reason to celebrate and be together. As many of you guys know, we like to party a lot. And so what I also got to see and be exposed to was those struggling. There's a lot of people struggling to make ends meet, to pay rent and things like that. But I also saw the beauty that community comes to and the giving that was involved to do so. I saw my parents give to those who were in need, friends, family, it didn't matter. Even if it wouldn't have been repaid, it was given because it sustained the community. And I also saw my mother take refuge or give refuge to a fellow gangster seeking to hide out from other gangsters that were chasing him. And one of the things that I noticed from seeing this young man in our home hiding out, as my mother fed him, is that he was scared, and he was only a gangster because that's what he was cornered into, in a sense, by growing up in these communities. The violence that you experience there, there's kind of no way out of it. I myself had PTSD from cars driving by because I was almost caught in a drive-by. So I kind of started ducking after every car would pass by. So think about growing up in that kind of a community. But I never really felt like this was truly a problem. I was okay with it because I was so happy to be in such a deeply loving community like the one that I had. And to see my parents give so generously, it kind of tipped the scales for me to kind of negate the negativity and the violence that I saw. So then I want you to now take a look at this hierarchy. I'm pretty sure many of you are very familiar with it. It's Maslow's hierarchies. And so there's two of them here. Apparently, I want to give credit to Siobhan Riordan, and she leads the facilitator's path and from the Learning Communities Network. And she's done a great job, and she presented this different perspective to me. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Apparently, Maslow went to study with the Blackfoot tribe. And as he did so, he realized that the people there lived in a completely different way of life, and that they were all self-actualized already. And he didn't get to publish this, unfortunately, but there is a lot of evidence, and there's been a lot of scientific research to back this up. And so I'm going to define self-actualized as being who you are meant to be. And when I looked at this and when I saw this, it was so inspiring to me, because growing up in the way that I did, I was self-actualized. I felt so blissful, so happy to be surrounded by so much love, so much generosity, so much family, that I felt like I was who I needed to be. And because of that, I had a deep connection with the divine. I had a deep connection, a deep relationship with the divine. And I always saw the divine everywhere playing with me. I would communicate like, let me see this, or will this happen, or this will happen. And the divine would kind of playfully answer me in response. And it was so beautiful. And I feel that this is what the Blackfoot tribe also experienced. And so then you build on community actualization. So kind of like what I saw my parents do is, by being so generous, they're helping build up the community. And here, I would say that we are leading to human evolution at the very end of the tipi there. So it's very different from our Western perspective. And I always like to bring this perspective over, because in our Western perspective, we seem to think that we have to struggle with the way society currently is. And so as I started growing up and I started noticing the smog in the greater Los Angeles area, I started questioning, why are we allowing this? I didn't understand. So then as I went into college, I started learning more about globalization. And I really, really love this slide. I'm also a climate reality project leader, excuse me. This slide, I need to give credit to the 24 Hours of Reality, Countdown to the Future. And I love it because it shows how our great civilization is contributing to pollution, to our own demise, for lack of better words. And I bring this up here because I always want to bring spirituality back to reality. You know, it's not just about self-actualizing for ourselves. It's about looking at how we are, the footprint that we're leaving on this earth, and what we are going to bring towards the future and our future generations. So I also want to add that these are not the only leading contributors to the destruction that we're seeing. Our own US, the Pentagon, is also the main contributor to a lot of the pollution that we are seeing. So one of the things that I got into college and I started learning is that poverty is a socio-economic problem. It is a systemic problem arising from our own society, what we've accepted, what we are okay with, and how we allow. And it really, really made me mad to realize that here I am seeing people struggling, working hours, not being able to raise their children fully, and their children just being out and committing crime or contemplating suicide because they don't have any guidance. They lack it, all because they don't have the funds. They don't have the money that they need to survive in this economy. And so it really, really made me mad, because I saw it firsthand, that all that was needed was for us to share amongst each other, just like my parents did. And so when I got into college, I learned of a lot of clubs, and I went into one club that I thought politics was the way to change things. And in this club, there was a gentleman who, there was many mics there, and there was one that they called Kundalini Mike. And I had heard of Kundalini, but I didn't look into it, even though I believe Google was around at the time, just starting. And so one time I chased this gentleman down and I said, Kundalini Mike, I said, can you tell me what Kundalini is? And he said,
I remember saying something to the effect of that it was the force behind our evolution and also responsible for the world's religions.
and I was like, wow, I always felt that there was some connective tissue with life and with everything. And it really, really struck me. And I hung around him and we fell in love and had our own little family. And as we were doing so, there's our little family, our two boys. And as we were doing so, we started the Emerging Sciences Foundation. And first, Michael, also coming from a background of having to be a struggling teenager and knowing, the struggle that there is in just not really having the guidance that one needs, he sought to help out the children from South Central Los Angeles, trying to help them understand who they are, self-transform, bringing this knowledge over to them. For whatever reason, the school ended up closing and that didn't go through. So then we had to come back to the drawing table. And that's when I was able to help a little bit more, pick up and help out with the Emerging Sciences Foundation. And we brought it over instead to the global community, to you guys. And that's where we are now. And Mike's going to help define a little bit more what Kundalini is. I know he gave a really brief answer. And I'm gonna also hand it over to Mike.
All right. So I wanted to kind of explain our work using a metaphor, or I guess an analogy here. So I want you to, for a moment, imagine a world without the understanding of electromagnetism. In that world, you would not have any of the modern inventions that we have in our world today. No cars, no electronics, cell phones, TV, internet, most modern medical devices that would save your life. And also this Zoom meeting would certainly not be possible without a modern understanding of electromagnetism, and how to take advantage of that. But when we actually look at what electromagnetism is and the science behind it, it's very much in contrast with what is presented to us by our senses. It's a world of invisible fields and particle waves. We're talking about things that behave in ways that are completely different from anything that we normally experience. But as strange as these things sound, they are part of the accepted science of today, and in fact drive all of our modern technology involving electronics. So this kind of brings up this dichotomy between a couple of ideas. There's Occam's razor, which says that the simplest explanation is often the one that's most correct. And then there's Hickham's dictum, which is actually used in the medical field, which basically says that a phenomenon can have any number of explanations that it damn well pleases. And I think this is sort of the more correct, the Hickham's dictum is the more correct way of ascertaining a new area of science, in that sometimes the simplest explanation, like for example, saying that lightning is a weapon of Zeus, or maybe a fast traveling liquid or something like that, is certainly not the most correct explanation for it. The same goes for many areas of science, germ theory and others, where it's important to let the phenomenon dictate the explanations behind it and the science behind it. So this kind of brings us to an explanation of what the emerging sciences really is all about, and what underpins the current phase of our scientific research. So first of all, we're talking about the science of consciousness, and I'm using quotes here because this is something that is developing, but it has been a science for a long, long time. So first of all, we're talking about countless observations across enormous spans of time, all point to the existence of a superintelligence. You find this across pretty much every culture. It's very much concentrated in the Indian tradition. And generally, here are the sort of assumptions, the working assumptions behind this new science of consciousness. Number one is that superintelligence, God, whatever you want to call it, is observed to be the primary reality behind the physical universe. Second, this superintelligence is only perceptible once the brain is enhanced, either temporarily or permanently. And the state of consciousness that is able to perceive the superintelligence, we call higher consciousness, which is the object and aim of our research. Next, this superintelligence can affect the body and mind through a medium unknown to science. In other words, one almost universal observation is that this superintelligence can somehow interact with the body and mind to reshape it sometimes into this new dimension of consciousness that we call higher consciousness. And lastly, that this superintelligent agency can be awakened and accelerated. Sometimes this happens inadvertently, sometimes it happens through intense spiritual practices. But in either case, the superintelligent energy can be awakened or accelerated, with a caveat being that it is through grace, through some unknown intelligence behind the scenes that actually is able to open the door for the individual from the inside, not necessarily through one's force of will alone. And so I want you to, for a moment, imagine a world where this science of consciousness has been sufficiently advanced, with society structured with self-actualization and the aim of higher consciousness as the primary goal. Imagine what kinds of social systems might exist, what kinds of economic systems might exist. And for a moment, just go back to the earlier story of electromagnetism. Imagine if electromagnetism has improved our society as much as it has, how much more would a discovery as important as this field of consciousness, higher consciousness, how much more will that be able to improve our lives, being a discovery of far greater magnitude? So I just wanted to announce what is up and coming for the ESF. And specifically, I wanted to talk to the launch of a new experiment that we're going to be conducting this year. As was mentioned, Mauro Zapatera, a Harvard PhD MD, has been leading meditation practices, working with our team to make sure that his meditations are following some of the principles and guidelines that we found in our research. He's been doing that quite well. Now that we've built a library of those practices, what we're going to be doing in this near future is beginning to deliver those practices to the public, allowing people to take surveys, to submit their data, and to practice Mauro's meditations and also other expert advice. We're going to take that information and we're going to try to glean data and insights from the information that people provide us, have that sieve through subject matter experts who can then further advise on the ideal practices, advice, lifestyles, those types of things, and provide those back to the community within this app, this Brilliano app, which is a web and mobile app. This is a community and goal-based system. Its aim is to achieve higher consciousness. Now, again, I just want to say that achieving higher consciousness is not something that can be easily attained or that can be attained through force of will. This is something that is highly dependent on a lot of different characteristics and predictors, most of which we have very little understanding of. It could be hereditary, it could be lifestyle, it could be maybe something else, maybe a spark that you have inside of you that we can't measure. So all of these things come with a caveat, but it's important to note that our goal really is to maximize someone's opportunity to achieve higher consciousness, or at least approach a state of consciousness closer to higher consciousness, aiding in our personal and collective evolution. So again, what's next for the ESF? We mentioned launching this major experiment to bring individuals closer to these experiences of higher consciousness. We can't do this alone. It's too vast of a subject. It's too nuanced, and there are far too many things for any one person or group to even be responsible for. So what we are going to be doing is creating a consortium of scientists and researchers to share and combine these research insights into a concentrated body of knowledge around spiritual awakening. So everybody that you heard speaking today will certainly be invited into this consortium. We're going to be relying on them for expert advice. And hopefully we will all benefit tremendously from participation in the consortium by learning from one another and by benefiting from a lot of the research that the ESF will be conducting on the information we'll be collecting. Lastly, as I mentioned, Mauro has been leading these meditation sessions, but we're also inviting other spiritual teachers to contribute their content, practices, insights to the Brilliano app as we continue to grow the experiment. There's a lot of benefits in doing that. Number one would be data insights that you may be able to glean in terms of what practices are working and what practices are not. Those findings will be made public to both Brilliano participants, you, the general public, and also to the spiritual teachers, scientists, and researchers involved in this very, very ambitious project. So with that, I will leave it there and I will pass it off to Linda to close us out here.
So I love this quote, and I did see a lot of Albert Einstein quotes in the chat earlier today. And one of the things that I really, really want to emphasize is that the best knowledge, is our own experience. And what we're doing here is from our research, is that when people tend to have these experiences, they become more generous, compassionate, altruistic, and just everything that we need right now. So that is a main driver for what I tend to do here with the foundation. I am a hearth tender, I believe is what it's called. And definitely Michael is the edge walker. And so together we bring you our heartfelt work to try to do our best to bring the change that I know, and we both know, that we can bring into this world. And we can't do it alone. We definitely need everyone on board, and we need to start coming together. So we hope that all this work, all this effort does something to change all of you and to help bring, a new dawn to humanity, because we definitely are in the dark night of the soul for humanity, I feel right now. And so please take part in the experiment, or keep working on yourself and keep building that knowledge within yourself, and trust in your own experiences and contribute to where you can. And thank you so much for being here with us today. I know it was a very long day, and now I'm really excited to open it up to the Q&A.
I just wanted to add one thing before we close, which is that, a lot of the speakers have many different ideas that they brought to the table. And while all of our viewpoints may not agree 100%, I would hope that all of us can agree that if we can leave this world a little bit better than we found it, then mission accomplished for us.